Have you ever told yourself a teammate should just know what you expected and then watched the project go sideways? Most manufacturing leaders assume being clear once is enough, but there's a gap that quietly drives missed deadlines, rework, finger pointing, and even six-figure mistakes. The space between what we think is expected and what's actually expected. So after 25 years of running plants and a decade of coaching manufacturing leaders, I call this the expectation gap. Today, I'll show you the communication skills to close it and three questions you can use in your very next conversation. So I know this because I had a lot of cautionary tales of my own career. And Fort St. Thomas was a plant that built Crown Vics and Grand Marquis. And all of a sudden, I find myself 11 o'clock at night on a hot August Friday afternoon beside the steel conveyor that's supposed to make a lot of noise when these clunky seats go down to hit the car, which they go in, and it's not making any noise. And Tom, my boss, is standing in front of me and he's stomping his foot and he's talking to me so loudly that I think he's going to chew my head off. Have you ever had someone that was that angry that they're stomping their foot? Well, clearly we had a gap. And, I thought about this for years, and Tom was a great leader. And in that moment, it was uncomfortable. And I thought, how do we get here? How do we get here that he's so upset at me personally? And I really thought about expectations. So me being a younger logistics supervisor, I was trying to manage these seats coming in, and the supplier was getting behind. And I thought, well, I can just take care of this. Tom's busy. Not thinking that Tom's my boss and he should probably know. And I'm thinking, what drives a good man with good intentions and great leadership, which cared about me, like to behave in this way? And for years, I kind of blamed Tom and how he responded. But he had expectations of me and I had expectations of him. But one of his expectations was that I would keep him in the loop and I would protect him in such a way that people would know what's going on. And so earlier in the night, I didn't reach out to him. And that was his expectation. So we had this gap of what I believe was expected from a young leader managing all the shipments to what he believed was expected of, hey, I'm responsible for this whole operation. If you're starting to get yourself into trouble, you got to let me know before you get in so much trouble that I can't help you anymore. So when the line's down, it's too late. So by the time that Tom knew, he couldn't do anything to help me. And in my mind, I was like, hey, we couldn't have done much anyways. What matters is that we didn't talk about those expectations, or maybe I didn't listen. But my point is that through manufacturing, we're going to have these moments where we're going to have these disconnects of what we believe is expected and what's actually expected. And that is the expectation gap. And through that and through my career, I can kind of go through and it's like, I see it all the time now. I see it in manufacturing plants show up in different ways. And what I do know is that when we're clear, that's really kind. And when we're unclear, that's unkind. So when you think, hey, people should just know, they should just know better. Well, could we just pause? And I like to say, can we come from an attitude of curiosity? If this person works in your organization, they were hired for a reason. And instead of having that judgment, right, we can say, well, huh, I wonder what good looked like for them. I wonder, like, if that project looks like it's not done properly, like, did we have that conversation? What did they think that this is done? It's kind of like cleaning. You go to different friends' places and your thought of a clean house or apartment could be different. Someone else's opinion of what a clean apartment or house looks like. So when we get clarity on that, because I've talked to leaders and I've probably done it myself, where it's like, hey, I did explain, I made it clear. They're just not listening or they're not paying attention. But that isn't usually the case, because when I get that leader and that teammate in the same room, we can usually find some type of disconnect. So the point is here is, how do you get in front of that? What questions can you ask so that we can avoid that? Because That's how we're going to solve these problems. In the previous solo episode, we talked about the showing up gap, the space between our intentions and other people's perceptions or how they experience us. And so when we get through that and we're thinking, okay, I'm showing up in such a way. Now I need to understand, are the expectations clear? So my favorite one is, what does good look like to you? Or what does done look like to you? And then kind of go in, right? So let's say we're installing a piece of equipment, right? Done could be, hey, I turn the button on and the equipment runs. That could be done to the person installing it, and if you're the person that's going to be running it every day, done to you looks like all the cables are wrapped up tightly and off the floor so I can clean it. Done looks like all those little twist ties, the cutoffs, that they're cleaned up, right? That's what done looks like. Or maybe you got a production board. You can go through and say, does a good board filled out look like to you? And you just might find that instead of you thinking, hey, they just don't care or they're not being responsible, maybe they're just not clear on what you're expecting and how that board's filled out. And if you're thinking, hey, there's an SOP and they should just know, and what does it matter? If it's not been filled out properly, before we go to the accountability, and that'll be our next solo episode is the accountability gap. We're going to talk about, hey, what does that good look like? And you can just kind of say, hey, other questions you can ask is, what's going on with this project? And you can learn a lot, right? And the last one I like to ask, the third question is, how can I support you? Because when you start asking those types of questions, you're going to find out, what are they expecting? And are they expecting what you expect? So those aligned expectations are the core of connection. So we don't want to wait for that project to go sideways. We don't want to wait for that problem, right? So by having a few of these conversations, we can avoid performance improvement plans, right? Because we've made those expectations clear. Because most people want to meet your expectations. We're not usually waking up out of bed thinking, I just want to disappoint someone today. I just want to make sure that when I come into work, that people don't value what I do. I believe we have good intentions. I believe in curiosity. And I believe that when we choose to have a positive belief that the intent's good, we can really understand what the gap is. And sometimes there's that problem beneath the problem. And on the surface, it just looks like assumptions of something's not done right. But when we find out what does good look like for you, then that's a different story. Now we're getting clarity around this. So this whole communication skills, it's a whole new ballgame of just having those clear expectations. So that could be a plant manager to your supervisor to a frontline supervisor. It's just having that alignment. And when we have that, we have more trust, right? Because when we're running around and we have the pressure of manufacturing, we can get lost in the fact that we just have all these responsibilities and we just got to do our best. And this is what we got to work with. Instead, just taking that 5 minutes of saying, hey, what's the expectation here? Like, what kind of help would I need in order to meet those expectations? And sometimes we do need to encourage each other, and it doesn't mean that we're going to get more help, but it might mean something else come with that conversation. But the deeper we can go into that conversation on what the expectation is, then the higher the probability you're going to get the desired outcome, get the results, whether that's safety, quality, productivity, and all that builds trust. So that's the essence of the expectation gap. That's one of the main gaps of the 3 in the manufacturing greatness framework. So I've got 10 more questions, which I would encourage you to ask. I'll leave a link in the show notes. If you sign up for the newsletter, you get those 10 questions. You can just keep listening to the podcast. I'm going to keep repeating some of these questions and giving you the different ones and just going to give you new tools and resources. But if you do sign up for that, the newsletter is going to provide some deeper resources I can't share on the podcast. And I'll keep you engaged for the book release, which is going to be in just over a year from now, May 11th, 2027. Manufacturing Greatness.